She's still. Okay. You're on the April one?
On the workshop.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, I just. No, the one for April 12th, right?
I just clicked on town board workshop.
Yeah. Which one though, you know?
Oh, I don't know, I thought they were recurring.
Oh, wait.
85
Never
seconds.
mind, it's letting me in.
Oh.
It wasn't letting me in at first. I thought we were on a different one. It's the same code. I don't know. Okay, make a motion to exit executive session at 7:15 PM.
One second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. Okay, couple quick resolutions, seeker determination, local law 3 of 2023. Town of Rochester Town Board determines local law 3 of 2023 will not have a significant adverse impact on the environment. It should be classified as a type 2 action under the following 6 NYCRR Part 617 criteria. No further seeker review is required. 617.5 C26. Routine or continuing agency administration and management, not including new programs or major reordering of priorities that may affect the environment. So that motion.
We'll make that one.
One second.
And this is the one on the stretch energy code. So Kate, that's a roll call vote.
Councilman Coleman.
Aye.
Councilwoman Anowen.
Aye.
Councilman Patton.
Aye.
Councilman Smeeta. Another one. Supervisor Baden.
Aye. Okay, next, consideration of local law 3 of 2023, Town of Rochester Town Board adopts local law 3 of 2023. Local law amending section 65-1 of chapter 65, building construction. The code of the town of Rochester and requests the town clerk file notice with the New York State Department of State.
I make that motion.
One second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. Next, seeker determination, local law 4 of 2023. Town of Rochester Town Board determines local law 4 of 2023 will not have a significant adverse impact on the environment. Should be classified as a type 2 action under the following 6 NYCRR Part 617 criteria. No further seeker review is required. 617.5 C26. Routine or continuing agency administration and management, not including new programs or major reordering of priorities that may affect the environment.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
I'll second.
Any questions or discussion? Roll call.
Councilman Coleman.
Aye.
Councilwoman Anowen.
Aye.
Councilman Patton.
Aye.
Councilwoman Smeeta.
Aye.
Supervisor Baden.
Next, consideration of local law 4, 2023. Town of Rochester Town Board adopts local law 4 of 2023, a local law deleting and replacing chapter 65 building construction of the code of the town of Rochester. Requests the town clerk file notice with the New York Department of State.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any questions or discussion? Remember, it was originally listed as 111. We corrected it to 65, which is the chapter number change that was made a couple of years ago and inadvertently not carried over properly. So, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained. And I will send a copy to Alyssa and Jerry, and then Kate, if you can just let us know when it's received. Next is prepayment of a voucher. This one slipped through the cracks. The Town of Rochester Town Board authorizes the town supervisor to pay the amount of $1,100 from the general fund to the New York State Association of Towns. This voucher to be included in the March 2023 audited vouchers.
I'll make that motion.
Have a second? Second. Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained. Here's a voucher if you guys can sign it. You can send me a check tomorrow.
I don't have my pen.
I don't have your colored pen, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's okay.
It doesn't have to be.
Doesn't have to be. That's just when we got all the vouchers in front of us. Okay, do you want to go out of order? Do you want to wait on the audit and move on to the planning initial escrow fees? So this is recommended resolution. On request of the planning board, Town of Rochester Town Board establishes the 2023 initial escrow fee schedule effective March 27, 2023 as presented. These fees are deposited with the supervisor's office in the town escrow account for reimbursement of professional fees incurred during the review of applications. Additional funding shall be required if the escrow amount is depleted or reaches less than 10% of the initial deposit. Upon the end of the application review process, when all professional billings have been satisfied, the town supervisor will remit any remaining funds back to the applicant. So they're proposing, and this is the same as it was in 2022. We just didn't adopt it at the beginning of 2023. So lot line will be no escrow fee. A lot line that is a change to an existing plat will be $250. A minor subdivision is $1,000. A major subdivision is $1,500. A site plan special use is $1,000 to $2,500 based on the planner estimate and agreement by the planning board. So this is in addition to the fees for the application itself.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, now second. The only one I have a question on is the existing plat for the major minor subdivision, because as we have discussed, the lot line is not really a subdivision. So I think that came about because of the sort of misidentification that it had to be treated as a major or minor subdivision. Lot line adjustment is a lot line adjustment. If it's a subdivision, that's one thing, but I would like to remove that one and keep the others. And if the board will allow us to ask Chair Grasso what he thinks about that, is the board okay with that? Give him the privilege of court.
I totally agree with you, Mike. I think that, that there should be no fee there, but the conversation of minor versus major discussion has not been discussed with all board members because we've had some absences.
Understood.
So, I think that, we keep it as proposed, but going forward, once the code changes with our next subdivision law,
We could change.
we can adjust.
Fair enough.
That'd be my recommendation.
Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. I don't think we're gonna get the same referrals from Jerry, though, that we were, because it's been clarified now, even in the current code,
And
that's not really.
this
what it
line item will
is.
probably just go.
So if that's the case, we can adopt it as is. So. Sorry.
I guess what I'm getting at is I don't anticipate it.
Fair enough. So with that, do I have a motion? As it was stated?
I think we did.
I did. Okay, never mind then. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain. Okay. Now we'll go, and the only reason I put it the way I did is because the Justice Court audit fit at the bottom of that page and the other one didn't. So. Anyway, we'll move to the audit, and Aaron and Charlotte can present.
Sure, so I'm sorry that I just gave this to you and didn't give you a chance to read it. So if anyone would like to hold off on voting on it, we can accept the report next week.
Yes.
So I'd like to say that. I don't know how much of this you want me to read into the record. Basically,
You have,
oh, I put it in front of you.
I'm sorry, I think I might have grabbed.
Oh,
it.
there's
It
another.
might-
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
sorry.
okay. I don't know that you need to read it so much.
So- Basically, the first, I have like the first, page 2 And 3 is the actual checklist review for Justice Alba. And then page 4 and 5 is the annual checklist review for Justice Laflamme. And that's what we use as the basis of the actual review. And then the last page is our overall evaluation. And in that we are making a recommendation. So, you know, I feel like I'm giving to everyone at the last minute, and you probably would like to be able to read that
Yeah.
narrative and then.
We can table this agenda item till the audit meeting next week and vote on it at the audit meeting. If the board wants to do that. They asked that I submit the letter by the end of March, but again, there's no penalty as many things if we don't do it. So, I mean, if we do it on the 30th, I can put it in the mail on the 31st, and it will
Yeah.
still be there by the end of March. So I would like to look through it, and I may have a couple questions.
Okay. Yeah, that way you can ask us questions, and that way I don't have to necessarily do the whole thing right now.
And so for the two of you, well, you went through this last year. Yeah, but you also,
We did this last
we
year.
did this process
Yeah,
last year. Yeah, you were on the
The
board.
two of us.
But you had just joined the board, so, yeah,
Yeah,
so
it was
this
in
is the
fresh.
annual financial review that we are, once a year, we get the opportunity to look at the court's books to determine if they are doing everything properly, and we are required to report back to the state justice court administration, kind of our findings. And there's a checklist of questions and how to do it, basically. And then, so this report, the way I do it, I don't know how other people do it, I send a copy of the report. I also send a copy of the report to the judges. So there you have a copy of it. Thank you very much, yeah. So, okay, so we will table an actual vote or discussion on that.
And in the meantime, if anyone looks it over and wants me to clarify anything, I'm happy to revise this over the weekend, and then we can. I'm not gonna answer any questions.
Here and, I will answer what I can for you.
That's one packet. So the courthouse, speaking of the courthouse, here you go. We finalized the contract with M&T Advanced Construction Solutions. They started immediately. Last Friday went in and started doing demolition. Going very, very smoothly until they called me over the weekend. Once they got all the sheetrock and the walls down, they discovered that the best we can tell is somewhere along the way, the outside walls of the building there where the bathrooms are were not hit by a vehicle impacted. They were picked up and set back down again. We think it may have been in a course of maybe somewhere along the way, snow was maybe removed with a bucket truck. That is the best answer that we can possibly come up with. It is not a new thing. Tim Bunch estimated that it could be as long as 30 years ago or even longer when this happened. But the wall sort of hid this. He provided a lot of detail. The pictures will show you. This first picture shows you how far off the cinder blocks are. You see the fingers are in about halfway, about 2 inches. There's a pretty substantial crack in the foundation. He put his level up. Basically, the 2 outside walls are compromised to the point that the top part are leaning in. Bottom line is it needs to be repaired. He said, what would you like us to do? They finished the demolition. They've stopped work until we decide what to do. So I said, please put together a proposal for a change order to us. They did a very nice job doing this. presented that to me on Wednesday of last week. They would like to modify section 1, where they will redo those 2 sections of walls. They do offer, if we do the excavation outside that is necessary, a $3,000 rebate. And I did speak with Jeff Fry, and he said, no problem, we can do that. So, so essentially it would be 11,800. Also, the water system, which is the other, as you probably all know and have heard, we've had a lot of problems with that water system over the years. We probably spent close to $2,000 last year alone in Culligan in repairs and service calls. I can't even think how much we spent on filters, that Harry is constantly changing the filters. When Tim reviewed this, he said, the valve that is in here is just, quite frankly, it's about a 30-year-old or 20-year-old valve system. And he said they don't even use that type of valve anymore. He's proposing installing a brand new water system. He also is proposing, and he will, if any of these parts, like the pump, very likely can be used with the new system. So they will use anything that they can from the new system. That would be, again, a rebate from that cost. The one thing I asked him is, I said, if we start mixing parts from this system to the other system, would that void the other warranty? He's going to check that out. But he spent an hour with me go in the office going through all this. Very, very well documented. It's one of those things that until you got it down to the studs, you wouldn't know. So basically, I'm asking tonight, if the board wants to do it, that we would establish this capital project. We would increase the amounts of the funding by what do we say, 23,400, and then if we're able to do the excavation, which we believe we can, that would be a $3,000 rebate, and there would be a potential rebate on the water system. So,
Yeah, I'd say.
what's the board think?
It's our building, it's broken, whether it's for the safety of the, of the people that are working there, or the, to fix it and do it the right way, or to make sure that if we ever decided someday to sell it, you can't sell a house with a busted foundation. So,
Yep.
so it sounds like it's got to be done. Better.
Okay, anybody else have any thoughts?
I think that's the way of construction now. Once you start to actually take part, really, when you
Yeah.
get down to the foundation. That's pretty much known. You're gonna find some other.
Yeah.
other
The good
It
news
needs to be
is he is confident that when this is done, we're gonna have a building that's gonna last a long time.
How old is the building now?
Well, that
Different
section of
part.
it was an addition. So the schoolhouse itself, which is the main core building, was, 1850s. I thought it was 70s, but it could be, probably is 50s. The addition, the best I could tell, was put on in around the 40s or 50s. So it's probably 70 to 80 years old. And, the reason we started this is the floor in there was just sagging unbelievably. I mean, the ladies' room, they almost fell off the toilet when.
Colin was there on it one day.
Yeah, it was.
And it was, I didn't know, I heard noise. What is that? Like, did you hear this? And I thought I was going crazy.
And Tim is confident with this new water system that the sulfur issues and the iron issues that are there will be dealt with 100%. And the cost of operation will be considerably less too.
As somebody who has terrible water issues, and I have a lot of water treatment going on, that's a tough thing to promise. And I've had to tweak my system multiple times, and I have iron, I don't have sulfur. But I also think, you know, is that something we need to do immediately? Or is that something we could talk to a few other, get a few quotes on the water system treatment? There's a lot of people that do it. One thing I found about water treatment people, is they all have a different way of doing it, and they all have a different perspective, so. I mean, it's not an insignificant cost. It's higher than what I paid for a fairly substantial treatment system, so I think it would be good to get some other quotes on that.
On the water system.
Yeah.
So the
But I think the
foundation.
foundation makes sense.
Okay. So with that being said, and he did break it out as 2 separate items. So with that being said, what I'd ask is first that we adopt resolution, and I'll just walk this through. We adopt resolution J, which is the creating the capital project, which we have not officially done yet. We accepted the contract, so then we would do an additional resolution to approve the 7A of the change order. And then the prepayment of the voucher is because they have attained the 10,000 was at start of the project. The 30,000 was at the end of the demolition. So I have 2 vouchers ready for you guys to sign, so we can pay them that funding. So with that, anybody else have any other thoughts or comments? If not, I'm going to go ahead and do the resolutions. Okay, so we'll start. Resolution J, Town of Rochester Town Board establishes the capital project of construction of ADA compliant unisex bathroom at the Town of Rochester Courthouse, Sampsonville Road, Cohasset. Contract for demolition and construction having been awarded to M&T Advanced Construction Solutions in the amount of, and I'm going to keep this amount here for now, $92,299.17 with resolution, and Kate can get the resolution number for us, of 2023, and signed by both parties on March 10th, 2023. Funding for such shall be made from the general fund reserve fund balance, 30,000 of such funding having been previously made to the town via the New York State Justice Court JCAP program received in 2022. The town board further authorizes the budget officer to transfer $92,299.17 from the general fund to the capital.
I'll make that motion. Oh, second.
Any questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, next resolution, I apologize, I'm gonna write it on the fly here. So Town of Rochester Town Board authorizes the town supervisor to sign the change order 7A for concrete frost walk code requirement. Dated March 20th, 2023, in the amount of $14,800, and authorizes the supervisor to transfer from, authorizes the budget officer to transfer $14,800 from the general fund to the capital.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second. Okay. I'm doing the 14.8. If we only use 11.8, which is the likelihood, we'll just transfer the other 3 back as unused. So, any questions on that? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain. Okay, and then the second part, the 7B, we'll table that for the moment. I can try to get a few more quotes to see. I'll let Tim know that, and we'll go from there. It's obviously going to be a little while before that they worry about that. The one question though, so the original contract was just to move the existing system over. What I'm not sure is if it's in the way, it's going to impact their ability to continue working, but let me talk to him and find out. And I can always come back to you guys next week. So, okay. Okay, now we'll do resolution K. This is a prepayment of voucher. Town of Rochester Town Board authorizes the town supervisor to make payment of 2 vouchers for payment from the capital fund to M&T Advanced Construction Solutions in the amounts of $10,000, having signed the contract, and $30,000 having completed demolition, as per the contract agreement signed March 10, 2023. Supervisor verifies both activities have been completed. This voucher to be included in the March 2023 audited vouchers. That motion?
I'll make the motion.
1 second. Any discussion? All in favor?
I,
Aye. Opposed? Want me to keep them going one direction? It's 2 vouchers. I can go one each direction, or I could go both one direction. Thank you very much. Bathrooms aren't cheap.
No.
Okay, next, RFP for the security consultant. Kate has put in your folders, there were 4 that were received on time. A 5th one was received the next day.
he emailed it at 3:00 and then sent the hard copy.
Right. Our RFP was very clear that they must be presented in person. Does the board agree that we will not consider I asked Kate to keep them. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want you to see it until we discussed. We did email, but we said email would not be accepted. So I feel like, my feeling is we don't accept that one. It was too late.
We haven't changed it in the past.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yep.
We shouldn't make it a rule if we don't want.
Understood. Okay, I just wanted to present that to you. So what I'm asking you to do between now and next and the audit meeting is to review these. On the top, you'll see that there's 4 business names. I've just numbered them 1 through 4, starting with the top one. And I have created scoring sheets for you guys that I will give you. What I did is I included in the packet, there is the RFP itself. And there's on the back, there's 4 separate scoring sheets. And they're labeled proposal number 1, 2, 3, and 4. So as we've always done in the past, the board members are numbered, not named. So I have no idea whose are whose. And I'm just going to randomly hand these out, and nobody will ever know who's what number unless you recognize your hand. So there's 2 for you guys. 2 for you guys, and 1 for me. So if you could review these, I don't think we need to have any discussion tonight, because I know you guys just got it now. Kate got it to me, but you see how far I got. It's still got the same rubber band around it that she gave it to me the other day. Adam, probably similar. So please, though, try to review these, do your scoring. Remember, the scoring on this, we're not scoring price. We're only scoring responsiveness criteria, because then we're going to do interviews from that point on. And that's where the price will come into the interview process.
Was it more for the business meeting, Mike, or?
I'd like to try to talk about it at the audit meeting, because hopefully the bills will go quick and then we can really dive into it. And then we could potentially award it at the business meeting, if that works. So, any questions on that? Okay, thank you very much. Agriculture Advisory Committee. I got a lot of applications from people.
And we did, Mike, in that posting we said the deadline's.
Tomorrow,
Okay.
understood.
Great. I just wanted to make sure.
Yep, no, I knew that. Yep, I just wanted to give you what we have as far as of today. So, and I did not count. I went back to my email and found them all. So we got 1, 2, they are in no particular order. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And looks like we got 12. So a very nice turnout. So my question now is, we set it at what, 7? 7 members, so we clearly have 12 interested people. We have possibly more coming tomorrow. When do we want to do interviews? I don't know that we want to do it at our regular meeting. I also remember our workshop meeting. We really need to focus on zoning. Another thing that we need to talk about tonight is we did talk about a possible Saturday for zoning, although April is Easter. And so we could make our workshop meeting be about these interviews and then do a Saturday for zoning. We don't have to decide this moment. We can decide that next week. We can decide it at the 5th if we want, or 4th, whatever the 4th. Yeah. Remember too, our April meeting is on Tuesday, not Thursday because of Passover. Yes,
I was looking at that because we're hosting now, but
we moved it to the Tuesday because the
Okay.
Passover starts Wednesday.
I did not update my calendar. I mean,
The regular meeting is on Tuesday?
Yes, in April. April, the regular meeting is on the 4th instead of the 6th because of or the 2nd. So it's exciting, and there are varying degrees. We did not ask for resumes, really. We just said letters of interest, and we got everything from just I would like to be on this committee to full-blown resumes. So feel free to look at it. If I get any more tomorrow, I will email them to you. We want to sort of stop at that point since we already have 12 and not take any more after.
I think so. I mean, I guess we said, please apply by.
I did the last couple days of sort of a rush have come in.
I
on that.
sent
I know you did.
a very effective reminder.
Yeah, yeah. Even Joanne got some calls like, what's this mean? And Joanne came in, yes, I know what it is about.
Yeah, I had someone asked me. Just earlier today.
Oh,
so they
great.
might be sending one
I did also do a
tomorrow.
reminder about in that same email, I did a reminder about the ag district inclusion, so
Yes.
that might also be like.
Yes. Okay. This is more kind of for Aaron, but the DEC, I was made aware.
Yeah, I was wondering about this.
Yeah, I was made aware about these. It was first presented to me by Greg Olivier from the new head of the RRA. Well, he presented to all the supervisors. He said we could get part of our transfer station manager's salary reimbursed by DEC. But when I started reading more about it, it's more about recycling and education. I guess in a stretch, if you don't have a specific recycling person, potentially your transfer station manager or your staff there are your recycling educators. So I just wanted to share it with you guys. It is due.
It's August, September, October is the
Right.
period.
Okay. So there's nothing we really need to do now. It showed up and then he actually called me to reinforce that I got it.
Yeah.
So I sort of felt the need to share it with you guys. Aaron, I apologize, but I'm going to ask if you can kind of maybe take the lead
I
in
will,
studying it a little bit.
this was on my to-do list last year and I didn't get around to putting anything together.
Okay.
I think I don't know if anyone has any ideas, but that was one thing I thought of because I looked up the grant, Mike, I didn't know about.
See, it does say recycling costs of a recycling.
Yeah,
coordinator.
so, yeah, and I had that thought too, is like, what if we assigned some particular responsibilities and then that could come with that. But the other thing is that I wanted to do some educational and promotional tools, so I could potentially put together an application and see if I could include both. I don't know what the cap is for each, I forgot, I looked it up the other day.
So the eligible costs for personal services are only for the salary and the benefits.
Yeah.
But you can get reimbursement for costs of recycling guides or mailers or brochures,
Right,
signs.
yeah,
Okay. So see what you think we can do. I mean, if we can, if we can do any of this stuff.
and I think they have another one, which they did last year, but it's for, infrastructure,
Okay.
that has a higher cap. That is maybe a grant application I would not want to do by myself.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm not asking that you so much that you write this, but that you just sort of explore the possibilities and come up with an idea of what we should consider doing. And I'm certainly willing to write the grant or work with you on it. I've got a lot of experience doing that these last few years, so. Okay, next agenda item. See, the agenda looked long, but it really wasn't that bad.
Says
I
that we're
don't
gonna get
think
bogged
anything
down.
more when they're up there.
This jinxed us, I know. No, it jinxed us. Okay. So, this is more just to sort of fill you in. I mentioned this last meeting, but I didn't have the actual data printed out for you because it had just come in. This is the ARPA Park grant that the county is doing for matching. I have followed up with Peak Engineering. Scott Davis came and viewed our park, and checked the soils and thinks it would be very possible to do this. He's going to put together some ballpark numbers because at this point, we're just applying for the money when we don't have to have a set in stone plan. He should have that back to me by our April board meeting, in which case I'm going to ask you at that meeting to approve me applying for the grant based on that criteria, and then I'll apply for the grant, which is due April 14th. So,
So for Charlotte and Michael.
oh yeah, you guys weren't here.
We,
Sorry.
there is a new grant available from the county parks, and it's a matching grant program available to municipalities. We discussed quickly a few things, and I think it sounded like we all thought investigating the feasibility of a bathroom, ADA accessible bathroom for our park because of the use of the porta potty and the, how, I also know that would probably help our recreation department out a little bit too. And then also putting that with a roof replacement for the pavilion is what we discussed getting prices on to see if it would fit with them.
So I did get a quote for the pavilion roof. It is at a level that if we were to accept it, we would need to get a second quote before, but that doesn't mean we can't use that number as a placeholder for the moment. It was around 14,000. That was with a full replywooding because we're guessing that plywood is probably original. And it would make no sense to put new shingles on plywood that we might have to replace the plywood in another 5 years or so. So that was with a full replywooding and a full, I don't know if we're gonna have enough money to do both. We had talked about the pavilion already, and we could certainly fund that out of general fund or out of our own, or
Right.
for that matter, we can use our own ARPA money. So there is a 50% match required, 25% though can be in-kind services. I did talk with Jeff. They certainly could do the excavation for the septic area. They could do the site work before the pad went in. A contractor heard our last meeting, and actually came in and provided me photos of what could be done there. And it's pretty impressive. The men's and a women's room in a very nice building, and so depending on what we get back from Scott Davis from Peak Engineering, and then I may talk to that contractor and see if he's willing to put together just the cost estimate for us, knowing that he might not get it, because we would have to go out to bids, obviously, but I have a feeling he might. And I think we got a good project. So I'll be back to you at the meeting on the 4th with more information about everything. And we'll go from there.
So I just want to, so we're gonna apply for the full 100,000, 50,000 matching,
Probably.
right?
Yeah.
And we
But
think
bear in
that
that 50,000 matching, 25,000 of it.
Yeah.
So 25,000 of it has to be cash. 25,000, up to 25,000 can be in kind. And that would be the cost of the salary, or the wages for our guys, the use of the equipment. So the most we're gonna, and if it's over 100,000, or if the project is over 150,000, obviously we're responsible for everything above that. So, but just because we're applying doesn't mean we're gonna do it.
Right, yeah.
If we don't get the grant, then maybe we don't do it, but if we do get the grant. And I will tell you, both Aaron and Kate immediately said, when I said, what should we do? Both of them went, bathrooms. And it's a brilliant idea. We're paying $130 a month for porta potty, and it is what it is. And
I think we
that
pay
bathroom's
less
good.
than one over there.
So I think it's a great idea. So thank you both for thinking of it.
No.
Oh, well, originally I was gonna say, once the rail trail is revamped too,
Yes.
I think the increase of
Yeah.
traffic.
Yep. I would agree.
Well, and the other thing we said that is also just like planning on investments in our park every single year is where we're at. And there's other projects that we would like to do
Yep.
at the park that we should still plan to do. Doesn't go. And just next year.
End of next year, we have to spend it by the end of next year, but we have to have it committed by the end, we're committed by the end of 2024.
Oh, really? Okay, I thought it was 20.
But we have to have it committed by the end of next year.
A lot. For that.
Next is. So next is our EEO granary application. I did get new information submitted to me. I supplied it to Peak Engineering, and they supplied a letter to us. And I know I came here with it. I emailed it to you, but I didn't at the last minute. Here it is. So here is the letter that they sent, and I have forwarded to the applicants as well. So this is their opinion of where we stand in terms of the seeker. They reviewed, there's a few things in the EAF that still are unanswered, so, or they think that may be incorrect, so they're asking for a revision to the EAF form, and that starts about the middle of the page, down under the bullet points. They did supply with the new information, they supplied a traffic memo where they did a traffic analysis. They got the Ulster County Department of Health float confirmation letter and provided that. They did update the site plan a little bit more and made some more changes, but it's just the color version of that one section, not the whole. I told them ultimately we do need a full site plan for the whole site. They have gotten everything uploaded to SHPO for State Historic Preservation. They are still waiting for those answers, but I am now listed as a reply to person. So when SHPO replies, I will get a copy of their reply. We don't anticipate that there's going to be any archaeology issues because that site has been previously disturbed many times already, and there's been no indication from SHPO. They just needed all the information before they could make a ruling. So that is really the key piece that we're waiting on to conduct seeker. It is Peak's opinion right now, based on what they have, that there would not be any moderate to large impacts in the part two. We still obviously can't do the part two until we get all the information, but I'm hoping maybe by next week, by our audit meeting, we'll have it. If I do have all the information, I'm gonna bring a part two, a blank part two, and ask that we do the part two of the seeker at that meeting, which could potentially lead to a neg deck. Once that's done, then we dive into the actual, then seeker is completed. Now, then we can dive into the actual review of the EEO request for zoning change, which involves a public hearing, sending to the Ulster County Planning Board for comment, sending to our own planning board for comment. So, but until seeker is completed, we're kind of in limbo.
Yeah, did they, so is this just on the resubmission that they had? That they came.
So they've done-
Presented on?
No, they
Or did they
did,
send
so
us
they
more?
did, they just sent more this week, which I forwarded to, and I haven't sent it to you guys yet.
Oh, okay.
I just got it, I sent it to Pete. What they submitted was more technical stuff. It was the traffic memo and the flow confirmation. Those were things that Pete was waiting on. So I got those to Pete immediately. Nadine, knowing that we were meeting tonight, pushed this letter through today to get it to you. I just got this other stuff late last week or early this week. So,
But they haven't changed anything other than what they came and presented to us.
correct.
Okay. I
This was
wanted to
just
clarify.
more detailed
What we discussed.
engineering information that was needed so seeker can be achieved.
Do we know if this traffic study was done by them or? it's DOT?
I didn't believe it was neither. It was done by a private consultant. Yeah, DOT doesn't do traffic studies.
Or not, yeah, not DOT, no. I don't remember who the issue was right now.
Yeah.
That we discussed at the meeting, because I know they were asking if they could just do.
But they
their
use
own-
DOT data in Ann Arbor. So, and one of the things that is being discussed and we would probably ask, we can't require because it's up to the county DPW, is to create that intersection as a three-way stop sign. So currently, Granite to Main Street, there is a stop sign, but Main Street going straight into towpath is not stop sign, but also because of the post office across the street. So there's the discussion of making that a three-way stop sign. Obviously, it can't be a fourth because there's no road across the street. It's just a business. But the fact that the post office property is wide open, not channelized, but that we can't mandate that the post office create a channelized because of the other application. We're kind of stuck with that being grandfathered in as it is. But because of that, I feel strongly, and it has been recommended. And then probably the DPW will require it, is my guess. So the towpath side of the intersection would be that's a town road. Main Street and Granite are county roads. So the county would be in control of two stop signs and we would be in control of one stop sign. But I think it makes sense based on, but their analysis of the traffic is that because it's a flowing type, it's not the type of business where all the traffic is going to come at one time. It's going to be a flowing traffic. So they did an analysis and I will email you all that stuff. I was more interested. I didn't think I was going to get this piece of paper tonight. I added this on the agenda more or less to say, hey, we got new information. And then Nadine called me today and said, hey, I'm talking to Scott. I can get you this tonight. So she did. It was hot off the press about 4:30 this afternoon. That's the status on that. The ethics law changes, as was requested. I had a conversation with Michael Richardson. This is his reply, and I asked him to put it in writing. For Charlotte and Michael, I had proposed a version A and a version B of changes to our ethics law. Michael Richardson reviewed both and said A is the way to go. So I didn't even bring B. So to backtrack, this is as a result of our discussion about the possible conflict of the person that we interviewed for the assessor field worker position. Bear in mind the 17.3B change that's in there. I just put that in because Mary Lou has said year after year after year, it's time for us to update that number to match the state. I don't care particularly if we do it or not do it, and if we think it's gonna open up a whole can of worms with the public, we won't do that change now. Quite frankly, leaving the gift value at $25 and not changing it to 75, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense. It's been 75 on the state for at least 10 years, probably more. It's kind of time for us to update to match the state. But the second part, Michael agreed with this way of doing it, just taking out the words direct or indirect. And I'll let you read his email to us, that he basically clarified that Aaron's concern was, and I know, Michael, you expressed the concern that the person have someone that they could go speak to if there was a problem. So the department head under our town code is the town supervisor for the assessor. And so the department heads, those 6 people that are listed in the 141 of our employee handbook, those are department heads. Everybody else is that who oversees the department is a supervisory employee. We may sometimes call them department heads, but we should probably try to stop that because they're not. The only department heads are the elected officials and the recreation director. And that was simply because as supervisor, I did not want to manage every after-school employee, every summer employee. So, so Michael feels that in a small town, that this situation sometimes comes up, and his feeling is that this would be okay. So, if any of you want to reach directly out to him to have further conversation, that's fine, and I have no problem with that. But I did reach out to him, and I did ask him to put it in writing. So with that, if people are comfortable, I would draft this in the terms of a local law and present it at our April meeting for setting public hearing. Or we could actually even set up a public hearing tonight if we wanted to. But if you want to think about it some more, I'm fine with that. Or we can not do it. So, anybody have any thoughts?
I'm fine with the changing the $25 to $75 to match the state standards with that. I think changing our ethics code in order to allow the hiring of a specific position is a really weird gray area that I'm not comfortable with, and I don't think it makes us look great for hiring one particular position, and that's why I would kind of reevaluate it personally. I don't love to hear other people's opinions, but I just don't think that that's
My
a
feeling
great
is,
idea and how we are presenting to the public with changing the ethics code base for that purpose.
So my
Why we're
feeling
changing
is-
it to that.
sorry, I didn't mean to.
No.
My feeling is that we're not changing it for that reason. That reason brought it to our attention. In a small town, it is very possible that you may have people who have a family relationship who work in the same department. And Michael's feeling is, as long as it is not direct supervision. So bear in mind, the direct supervision still will not be allowed. This is the indirect supervision. So this is the case of where a supervisory employee can have a family member working under them. But the direct supervision, if they were the last line of order, we cannot do that still. So while I agree this came up to solve a problem of an employee that, quite frankly, I think is overqualified for the job we're trying to hire. And I don't deny that I started looking at it to try to solve the problem, but I also don't. I think it's the question that made us look at it, you know, my opinion, so. Anyone else have any thoughts?
I'm still unclear about what indirect means.
I'm trying to get that, it's saying how. Like Mike said, anyone that's not a department head, he's directly the cover of, so even though there's like. So say he was in charge of recreation, Ashley technically would be running this, but Mike would be the department head that oversaw it, also there would be someone above her.
Well, recreation is the
Someone
wrong
there.
example, because Ashley is the direct supervisor for
So I'm saying if you wasn't that.
Oh,
It would,
okay.
if she hadn't been listed as the department head and it ran. Do
Understood.
that, Ashley, there's someone that's step above Ashley, so if like, say, one of her kids works there, they can report to Mike instead of her.
I
Because
guess
they're not the
my-
highest. they-
So the
Right.
indirect supervision means they can tell them, they can, you know, assign work to that person to do. They can direct them in terms of, so the indirect supervision means that they are not the, on paper, they are not the supervisor of that department. You know, or the department head, I'm gonna use the right word. So the department head of the code enforcement officer, the assessor's office, I'm trying to think what other departments. I don't know if there's any others. Fall under me, supervisor's office, obviously. All the town clerks fall totally under Kate. Town clerk's office, that whole operation, she is the department head. The highway department, Jeff is the department head of the highway department. A supervisory employee would be like, the working foreman is a supervisory employee. But that's a little different there because they have
Right, they
a
have-
collective bargaining group. So, for example, Jerry, as code enforcement officer, is the supervisory employee, but I am still the department head of all those employees. Or the supervisor is, not in this case, me.
Yeah, so
So-
I guess for me, just two things. One, when in non-municipal workplaces, when you say direct supervisor, it's just the person that you report to on a day-to-day basis. So this seems to be saying it's not that it's.
And that is correct.
And then the second thing for me is just so we are clear, what we would be saying then with this is that you can have whatever sort of any employee, regardless of their relationship, can have any sort of relationship except with the elected officials and the recreation director. So that would be the town supervisor, recreation director, justices, town clerk, and the highway.
Correct.
So like, that's what we would be changing this to.
Correct. But by saying direct or indirect supervision. So both the supervisor, the department head and the supervisory employee. And this is where Michael feels that
Other Michael.
other Michael Richardson. Michael Richardson feels that there is a way for that employee, if they have an issue with something, if there is a conflict, if there is a problem, they have someone they can go to resolve the situation.
That's right. I think, I mean, there are two things that I take into consideration now. One is protecting the town and our responsibility to the taxpayers. The other is protecting the employee. So if the person that is the indirect supervisor is not in charge of salary, hiring decisions, firing decisions, like they have no control over that person's employment. And I think that protects the town, right? We're not gonna have somebody saying, I'm gonna hire my cousin, even though they're not qualified, because I want to. And then as long as the employee has the ability, if they have an issue with that person who's supervising them being unfair, and they can go to a direct supervisor that intervene, and I think the employee is protected. So that's why I don't have a problem with this kind of situation. I think both the town and the employees are protected in that.
But so let me just bring up, so a supervisory employee directs and inspects the performance of the employees. So they do have say over like that person's role. And I'm not just thinking about those two individuals, but I think there's also a protection issue when you're talking about other employees within a department who also should have protections, who should be treated fairly. And if there's any unfairness going on, I mean, I understand like what you're saying about lawsuits and, you know, salaries, because we're the body that sets that, but I think it's bigger than just the relationship between two people. So I think for me, the impact of this is bigger than simply that.
Yeah, and I think that's reasonable. But I also think so let's say this third-party employee that's concerned about favoritism or anything, they still have recourse to direct supervisor, the town board, like there are other check valves in that scenario, in my mind.
So
Which is why I feel okay.
in directing and inspecting the performance, that's the day-to-day work. So the supervisor employee is the one that's directing what work needs to be done each day. Obviously, as the town supervisor, I'm not going to direct them.
Right.
You need to do this today.
And you're not gonna be the one saying whether or not they're doing it right or wrong, or whether or not
Well-
they should improve, because that's.
Well, but actually, yes, I am. So the improvement is different. So the inspection is looking and saying, hey, you did this wrong, or you need to change this. But improvement is something that does fall to the department head. So the supervisory employee can't say, oh, you need to go take more classes, or you need to go. So when you're dealing with the inspection of the performance of the employees is not a ratings, that's the wrong word, but it's not saying you need to do this. You need to improve your performance and you need to go do this, this, and this. That supervisor employee would come to me or come to the town board even and say, you know, that person, we can only be the ones to issue discipline.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And so that's where I think if there's confrontation and issues, there is a recourse. So, that's why I'm comfortable with it as well. Because there is a recourse if there is an issue, that employee can stop work what they're doing that very moment, come over to my office, call me, say, hey, we have a problem we need to solve right now. There is a recourse for them. So, and Michael did say it's not unusual in small towns to have this situation. So, and he did not take part in the writing of our ethics law. He did say that. This is pretty much the standard template.
I'd say, Mike, I agree with you because, again, the employee is protected, the town's protected, that's a good thing. I also say, we have a employee handbook and an ethics code, but we're not IBM or GE. I mean, we have a handful of specialized employees that we all agreed are paid under market value, and we prefer to source them from within the town borders. It's a pretty thin pool. So if we have to, think about, relationships and find a way to make it work, I think we should. To Aaron, to your point, I have a concern maybe in the future, maybe this board's not here, maybe it's some years from now that this could, rear its ugly head in a different way.
Well, as long as the employee handbook remains as is, it's clear. So,
But like I said, I think personal opinion is we should go ahead and take our HR person's recommendation.
well, is the board prepared to set a resolution for public hearing tonight? Do you want to wait, and consider it some more? Do you want to individually reach out to Michael and have more conversation? I don't want to put words in his mouth. I did ask him to put it in writing, and this is what he shared with me. But we did have a 10-minute conversation about it.
So Michael's usually pretty good at expressing his opinions. Did he say it was a good idea or bad idea? He's usually pretty good at.
Well, he said the option B was bad.
Okay.
And I said, okay, thank you. And I did say, I like A much better. And he said, I don't remember the exact words, but he said, he did say it's not unusual. He said he would have no problem because, and as he said, there is recourse. So he said we could consider prohibiting supervision of a relative by a department head, but allow a supervisor to direct only the day-to-day activities. We could do that in a specific circumstance. So we could say that supervisor employee can only direct the day-to-day activities, and anything else would come to the department head, whoever that may be.
What else is there? What would not fall under only the day-to-day activities? Like other things that a supervisor can do that is beyond.
Well,
the day-to-day?
So off the top of my head, I'm thinking of the performance of the employee. So if the supervisor employee thought that they were doing something wrong, instead of going to the employee and saying it, they could come to the department head and say, hey, they really need to fix how they're doing this. Can you talk to them? Instead of them talking to them. I fully admit it is a bit of a gray area, but I also, for a lot of years, we've had a lot of employees here who are related, and it's a small town.
No, I fully get that and understand it and know it's a gray area, but besides the direct supervision, with that, like the relationship between two people who are related or in a relationship together. My concern is also how other employees in that department are
Understood.
going to feel about this, like if it will make them uncomfortable. In that situation, and I don't ever want an employee to be uncomfortable. Obviously, favoritism is a thing, but when you get into partners that live together, if all of a sudden information not being updated with other people because they talked about it at home and not at work, like I just think that it's leaving us in an area for other issues that aren't just between the two people that are family members or in a relationship. I think it's opening up the door for more uncomfortable situations between other employees.
Well,
That can be very
That-
challenging
yes.
to talk
Okay.
about.
Yes,
Yeah, but
exactly.
that
That can be very
same-
uncomfortable. It's bring up to someone, even if they don't, it's not their direct supervisor. They go to a department head.
But that same employee, if it was an uncomfortable situation with another employee who wasn't related, those can also be uncomfortable. And even then, they should be going to the department head, not to their direct supervisor. So the direct supervisor really only deals with assigning the work.
And favoritism isn't exclusively when people are in a relationship.
Sometimes it's counter, believe me.
Really that no one's gonna, it's way more of an uncomfortable situation as an employee to go to someone and go, oh, I need to complain about my boss's wife who also works here and is in my same department, or I need to complain about my boss's cousin that's working here because of the fear of repercussions from that person. Not because it's easier to go, oh, I work with this person who has no relation to anyone else here, and go to someone and say something that is wrong and go on. It would be a much more difficult situation for most people to go if it's a related
I think
situation.
it's not, maybe there are other, we can imagine all kinds of uncomfortable conflicts and all kinds of comfortable situations. I feel like with this, we're opening the door to more of them.
Yes.
And we can minimize HR issues by not allowing this. So that's just my opinion. The board can do whatever it wants with this. That's my opinion as someone who has had lots of employees work with a coupled duo.
So forgetting the section K, can we backtrack to the section B? How does the board feel right now with changing it or not changing it? I only put it in because if we're modifying the ethics law, we might as well do it. Bear in mind, there is going to be people, there will be people. Yes, I am hypothetical, but there will be people who will come and complain
About raising it.
If,
I'm fine with
I'm
it.
fine with it.
if they do, then we can leave. If public opinion is that it deserves to be there, then fine. But like I said, let's try and bring it to the contemporary level of national state.
about. Okay. Well, Michael or Adam, you, Aaron, Charlotte, anybody have anything more? If not, I'm gonna make a resolution that we set version A of local law. We probably should get a good number. Actually, we don't have to give it a letter or a number until we adopt it. So we'll just say version A of local law X 2023 amendment, chapter 17 ethics. And set it for public hearing. Do we want to have it at a regular meeting? Is that enough time for you? That's 2 weeks from tomorrow.
Oh,
We
do have a public hearing that night too.
So we could add this right after that then. That's the public hearing on the fire. The only reason I'm feeling, I don't want to say sense of urgency on it is that, you know, I did say we get an answer one way or the other soon to the people who interviewed.
Let's see the public says about.
Okay, so Kate, then we'll set local law, version A of local law X of 2023 for a public hearing to be held Tuesday, April 4th, immediately following the public hearing for local law 5, 2023 at the Harold Lifton Community Center, 15 Tobacco Road, Accord, New York, 12404, and request town clerk circulate notice.
I'll make that one.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Charlotte, are you? for?
I said aye.
Oh,
I'm
you
gonna go
did,
to public.
Okay,
comment.
okay, no problem. Yes. Okay. Okay. So we'll set it for public hearing. Kate, I'll get all this to you tomorrow, so we can get it out. Subdivision code. I have a packet, of all the referral responses that we got from subdivision. You guys, details. That's for you too.
Ooh. Hefty.
Yeah. So we made a couple changes the last time we discussed it. I've made those changes, so you know, in the code in brown. So you can see the difference. The two changes that we agreed to was the definition of lot improvement. So we added in that one sentence that says lot improvements which do not create new lots shall not be considered subdivisions. Just to clarify everything. Because lot improvements aren't subdivisions. I also took out the section at the end of subdivision, re-subdivision of lands, the number 3. Where we say a re-subdivision which does not add new lots, and as we talked about, you can't have a subdivision without adding new lots, so it's not a re-subdivision if you're moving lot lines, so we took that out. And then there was one other section where we took out something. Where that was. Maybe I missed it. Oh, no. So
yeah.
it's at the end of Article 3. It's under re-subdivision of lands.
Yeah,
We took the
Made it
same
out.
thing out there. So what I did not do is anything with conservation subdivision. And also it was brought to my attention by several people that we have written a code that is going to make an awful lot of the town unsubdividable because of the standards, the general subdivision standards, 125.12, which was all that addition that was suggested by the code task force, which we say no more than 20% of the lot area in a subdivision can have slopes greater than 15%, or be in a wetland, or lie underwater, or be in the forest conditions, or have prime farmland, or lie within the critical environmental area. So the referral comments, the county came back, no county impact. The county looked at it more from form rather than detail. Barry Medenbach supplied a letter where he talks specifically about that section I'm talking about pretty thoroughly. Patrick Williams from the planning board sent this individually about the open space, and I coincidentally, and I thank Mark for it, he sent me the link to it. The CEC this week had a class on conservation subdivisions that I took, and I sent you all a link that they followed us up with that had all kinds of other templates you can go look at. And I took a bunch of notes of how conservation subdivision should be done in the opinion of the two presenters. The two presenters were, one person was a planner, the other was a land use attorney, who both have been in the business for 30 years. So this other section, this other email here is also from Patrick Williams, where he talks about the conservation subdivision. And he actually emailed the attorney who taught the class and asked for his reply back. And then there were two residents who were concerned that this was going to make it difficult to subdivide and could potentially drive up the cost of land in each district. So the two sections that, in my opinion, we need to look at is the 125.12 and then the conservation subdivision. We need to look at that and probably tweak them to one, because of unintended consequences, and one, to clarify how the conservation subdivision. So do we want to do that tonight? Do we want to dive into it? I know it's kind of a new concept, but we could start with 125.12 and kind of work through. That should be somewhat easy.
Yeah, I
It's
think,
just changing the
well-
criteria. I will say the zoning code amendment, all I want to do tonight is try to figure out a date when we're going to talk about it. So this will be really the last agenda item.
No, the following.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah,
I
just-
apologize. Thank you, Michael.
well, I mean, it's
So
8:30. I'm okay to talk about, especially 125.
why don't we start diving into
like,
it?
get some, I think that there's some things we might need to get.
So Mary Lou, I talked to her about this. She believes, she did not remember off the top of her head, but she believes Warsing uses 25% for slope, it's not 50.
Yeah.
15 is not, as Mr. Medenbach points out, is not very steep a grade. He says if you have a house on a slope with a walkout basement, the slope would typically need to be 20%. So a 100-foot slope is a 45-degree angle, so a 15% slope is only a 9-degree angle. It's not really very big, 9-degree angle in rise. So essentially that's pretty small. So 15% is a 15-foot rise in 100 feet, or a 5-foot rise in 33 feet. It's not really very much.
I'm okay with increasing.
To 25?
Isn't the 15 though the standard that the deals?
That's,
No.
No, 15% slopes are just areas, the 15% slope is mentioned in seeker in certain circumstances, but it's not necessarily a standard for subdivision.
Okay.
I think what happened is standards in other criteria got sort of moved into this criteria.
Gotcha.
And I don't have a very vivid memory of when the group was meeting on this. I may not have even been there at that point.
And when we decided on this, I think we were choosing.
I do remember this, we accepted this 100% as the code task force presented, and we didn't really talk about it, and shame on me, I didn't really look at it until Barry reached out to me, and then I did look at it, and I was like, it's not wrong. We just sort of made an awful lot of the town unsubdividable, and with a housing crisis, is that what we want to do? So. There's still other criteria that have to be met. It's not like we're suddenly gonna have rampant subdivision in the town.
Okay.
So
I just was wondering where the 15% came from. It sounds like it was an arbitrary.
I think it
I think
was.
it comes from the driveway standards, which have to do more about how you would go about constructing the driveway with 15% slope, not. And
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can look, we don't have to decide tonight, because if we don't get done with this, we can put 25 in for now, and I can try to look at other codes and see what they are. 20% is designated within a designated wetland. That one, I don't necessarily have a problem. Leaving the only 20% of a property can be in the wetland. Let's say, if you have a 3-acre parcel, 0.6 of an acre can be wetland. If you're gonna, because bear in mind, when you're doing subdivision, you are you're proving that it is a buildable lot. So,
And honestly, I think maybe that's a good context, Mike, behind these standards, because I believe the purpose of this was how do we get to people to see what a buildable lot could be?
Right.
Because sometimes you say, oh, I've got 10 acres, that means and I'm an R2, that means I could have 5 lots, but when you cut it up, there might be, like my property, for example, you can't do that because it's at like a 50-degree slope.
right, well, I use my property as an example. I mean, my house is built into the side of a hill. I have a walkout basement, and the upper floor is walk-in from the upper level, and it is a steep slope, and then past my house it goes to an even steeper slope, but there was plenty of room to build a house. It
Yeah.
meets the setbacks by
Right.
far. Now admittedly it's 6.4 acres, but it's still I guarantee you more than 20% of my property is more than 15-foot slopes, and it's able to achieve well, it's able to achieve septic. I'm not sure why it would be a problem.
Right, so I guess all I'm saying is for us, when we're looking at this right now and reviewing it, that's just a context to think about, is like, we just really are trying to make it so that it's easier to identify what a good buildable lot is, not to restrict, not to be like excessively.
Yep.
if that makes sense.
So Barry also did not comment on 2 or 3. He says, oh, he did actually. He said should be limited on building sites, but not necessarily need to be restricted from minimum lot areas. Activities are allowed within the fringes of floodplains. He's not wrong on that, but floodplains are an ever-evolving thing. Do we want to encourage construction like 5 feet off a floodplain? I don't know. I'm okay with leaving 3 the way it is, say 20% of the property in floodplain. Because it just means maybe you gotta have a bigger lot, where the floodplain is. You can't build, well, I take that back. You can build in a floodplain if you elevate. You have to elevate to at least 1 foot above the flood elevation. So you can either do infill, which is really expensive, or you can do what some people in Florida and other places where they basically build these houses on stilts. And they do carports underneath and things like that. And then the living structure is raised up above the floodplain. It's very doable.
Well, and also, just when we put our floodplain overlay district regulations with this, are we, I guess I'm just wondering how those two things are. Don't you have to double or
That's a good
slice the
question.
density in half if you're in the flood?
Yeah, is it protected by another part of the code, you're saying?
Yeah,
Yeah, like.
so in the zoning code,
In terms of your development.
it's a good question. I don't remember what it is. But I'll look it up.
So you're saying we wouldn't have to deal with it in subdivision if it's already dealt with it?
Well, I'm saying, how would these two things interact?
Yeah.
Because I think you only get half the density allowed in that zoning district.
I can't minimize my screen while I'm recording. I'm sorry. I think it is half. It's in the FD overlay section of the code.
But yeah, I don't know how it interacts with subdivision law and then like, are we,
Well, so in essence, if we're saying that the density, I think it says it can't be more or less.
right, for that, the portion of it that's. on the
That
parcel.
density.
Yeah.
Has to be no less than, is it 1 per 3 acres or 1 per 2?
Hmm.
It's at the tail end of the FD overlay section of the code. I don't have the whole code with me.
Well, I'm looking at
I'd say look at the existing too, because we didn't change it in this proposed.
Sure.
You got all the codes there, Adam. You got the overlays on?
So, I'm sorry.
Do you have your packet of codes that you've been carrying around with you?
Yeah.
I bet I can find it.
I'm just on.
Yeah.
It's 1 per 2.
That's what I thought. Thank you, Mark.
140-18. A. I'm sorry, B.
Yeah.
Second to last.
Okay, so it is proposed to change from 2 to 3 with the new code. I'm looking at the new code where it says. So
No density bonuses, no.
a density of more than 1 dwelling unit per 2 acres is the current, and what's proposed with the change is 3 acres. So with that being said, I think, Aaron, it almost kind of, or we almost don't need it. Because you couldn't,
I mean, you couldn't do anything.
right? You also couldn't get the subdivision because you have to have a minimum of, if we do the new code, you have to have a minimum of 3 acres. And you already can't build in the floodplain. I guess in theory, though, you could have 3 acres all in floodplain, but you still can't build unless you raise it up out of the flood.
Right. And that's, you could have 20% of you could have a part of your lot in it.
Right.
So maybe we should leave it,
Leave
because
it?
it's, what would you do? Because that's just for the part that's in the floodplain, those
Yeah.
regulations apply.
Yeah. Let's leave it for now. I'm not sure, and Barry points out, he said that item number 4, it's very confusing and seems to include a large portion of the town. He said this would be determined by a specific study of the town by a biologist to demonstrate why it should include up to the 10% of forest conditions and not 15%. I think it is too confusing. Personally, I think we should just take it out. I think it's not defined clearly enough. I understand the concept of it, but I don't know that it's a study that we have done in our town. as to where this occurs. I mean, every subdivision, part of the review is the conditions on that exact property. So,
Right, if there's a specific application that the planning board has a concern about, they can always require additional study.
exactly. I think we should take 4 out. That contains prime farmland. Now, there's
Yeah, there's some confusion.
so there's prime farmland, there's prime farmland if trade, and then what's the?
Farmland of statewide importance, which is not prime farmland, which is what most of our town is, but the Ulster County parcel viewer shows the two of them together. There's not a way to separate those two. So if you look at a map of the town of Rochester on the Ulster County parcel viewer and you hit the,
But it is separated by, there's lines.
Yeah.
And there's the
you can
code.
zoom in
Yeah,
and see, but if you were to look at a map of the town, it would look like the whole town will have farmland of statewide importance and prime farmland together,
because on Ulster County parcel viewer, they show all 3 as one
but
method.
so I think 2 issues here. One is prime farmland should be, if we're gonna keep this in, we should define it because it is
It is defined
It-
in state code.
yes, it is defined and it's a federal designation. And so it should be indicated here and it should probably be capitalized, honestly, because that makes it sound like it's.
We would say contains prime farmland, comma, as
Yeah.
defined in such
Right.
and such.
So if we were to keep it, I think it should be clarified, but the if is. Could we have a map?
Good.
That shows us,
Yes.
where the prime, I don't know where the data would come from. But like, I don't know, because I started to look at it, it's just like too much.
It is.
To look at, to go, most of our prime farmland is in the floodplain. So I think that's why we put that in there, because we kind of thought it was sort of a non-issue, but
Do we want to leave the prime farmland and add the as defined in, and I'll get the official source of the definition, because like you said, it is federally defined.
Yeah,
And
we can,
it's prime farmland, and then this is not, maybe we could even go further and say prime farmland, if drained, shall not be considered part of this.
yeah. we could
Because
say
prime
that.
farmland, if drained,
That's
most
the-
of that is muck land
Yeah.
or underwater. And the bottom fill, if the water was drained, it would be prime farmland, but right now you're not gonna do much on it. You might, there is agriculture, like down in Orange County, that's where they grow all the onions.
Well,
and
and-
muck.
I mean, it is possible, like, we have some fields that have drainage tiles that are that concentration, but like. I'm fine with that change. It's very intensive to drain, so.
Right.
But it's mostly, the intent was these prime farmland soils are not what was necessarily talked about. Prime farmland soils are typically like class 1, it's classes 1 and 2. And it is not like, these are very, very valuable crop soils. So that was the intent behind this, not to restrict the ability to subdivide the entire town. So I wouldn't, I guess this one in particular, I would want to know like what the map looks like
Yep.
before I made a decision. That's how I feel. But they are very important soils and it is different from farmland and statewide importance.
So, yeah, so, and so we would say contains prime farmland as defined in, and should we add this is not, or this does not
Well,
entail,
Have you, the definition talks about, yeah, we could put that in there.
say it's not prime farmland if drained or farmland of statewide importance, because the farmland of statewide importance is a New York State
Yeah.
designation, not a federal designation. And that is just about anywhere that they think it could be, you can farm, they call it farmland of state. It, as Aaron said, there's classifications, there's the 1 and 2 are prime farmland. And the 1 and 2 are also prime farmland if drained, and I think 3 is also prime farmland if drained. And then as you go lower,
3 is considered marginal,
okay,
so, but
so,
But so 1 and 2 are prime, or prime if drained, because sometimes the external conditions, but then 3, 4, and 5 are not.
okay.
Um,
So what's the farmland of statewide? enforcement?
that's like, so that is like soils that have historically been used in New York State for particular purposes. But sometimes they're class 2, but they typically are class 3 and have challenges like Hoosick gravelly loam, for example, is like that. And it's a great crop soil, but it's very, very stony. So there's just like different, they've been soils that are identified to be crop soils in New York State, but that's just because you don't have class 1 and 2 soils everywhere to do everything.
Okay.
So they're still important soils, but oftentimes they're not, they would be really challenging to do anything on. And so, like, you know, if you had that included in your yard, like that wouldn't. Right.
No, it does. So I think if we clear that up, it will get rid of the confusion, because I believe like Aaron does, I think that's what you're saying, is that we should keep it in, but we just need to clarify what it really means. Because if you click on Parcel Viewer, people need to learn that Parcel Viewer is a visual tool, but it is not, you can't use it for defined data.
And I would also say, so the mapping isn't accurate either. So if we were to impose this and someone did have a subdivision, there would need to be, they would want to verify if this was being, you know, if they were being held to this and it impacted them. You can verify whether or not those soils actually are, because the lines aren't.
The lines are approximation,
Yeah.
it's like the wetlands, law.
And
You have to
soil
go out and
moves.
field, yeah, you have to go out and field study to define the boundary of wetlands. I'm sure prime farmland is similar.
So
You
it
have to
would
go-
add that layer to the process.
But I can't find a usable data set that matches what's on Parcel Viewer. That looks like the raster, it's like a picture of it. I could look at the soils data set that we have that you did, that might designate prime soil, but
I could ask Tom Hines too, if he has
web-
access to a data set.
the
Well, the
federal
web
website
soil-
is down.
Huh?
The federal website gave a horrible.
Oh, which one? The web soil survey one? Okay, that's the one I use, but it's like, I didn't know how to get the data to match on, it doesn't have parcels.
They probably won't.
Right.
Well, let's start there and see. I would like to leave the critical environmental area there. I know people said you don't have one. That doesn't mean it's one of those things, if we put it in the code now, and we don't have one, it doesn't matter. But if down the road we do identify one and create it, then it's already in the code. Because the critical environmental area should not be subdivided. So I think we should leave that one in there. I think there's no reason to take that out. So B, dimensional standards. I'm not sure I'm understanding exactly what this is saying. Dimensional standards to be applied in conservation subdivision. Because bear in mind, one of the things we started talking about with the conservation subdivision is the question of whether it should be its own standalone lot, the area to be conserved, or can it remain pieces of multiple lots? And there's not a clear and defined answer about that. But if we want it to be its own standalone lot, that lot would also have to apply to the standards. And then in that case, it kind of defeats the purpose, because if you're saying only 20% of it can be prime farmland or wetlands, we may want it to be 80% wetlands and, you know, and the rest trails. So the conservation subdivision, by nature of the defining of the land to be conserved, I think B should just be struck out, because conservation subdivision is going to have the standards for what land can be conserved. So, does that make sense? To anybody other than me?
Feel like we want to encourage conservation
Right.
subdivision.
And by putting this in, we're
This
saying,
gives
yeah, oh, absolutely, and that's
Development.
my exact point, yeah. So I think we remove B.
Or we reword B to say, when calculating the differential standards for conservation subdivision, these standards do not have to apply. Because where would they be able to weigh?
In the conservation subdivision section, we'd include that in there. We'd
Okay.
say the standards of 125.12 do not apply.
Okay,
Do not apply to land being conserved. Or something along those lines. So the balance, the other lots, it would apply to, but the land being conserved, it wouldn't apply to. And I think it's more appropriate there, because if somebody's doing a conservation subdivision, that's where they're going to that section of code and getting the information.
I guess I was going one step further with my point, which was that if you're doing a proper conservation subdivision and you're setting aside a large tract of land that has these sensitivities, if we're restricting the buildable lots in the conservation subdivision to these standards also, it might make it challenging for that applicant to.
Then maybe we just say.
So that's what I was thinking, is that
Yeah.
the planning board should have the authority to be flexible. So, because we want conservation subdivisions not to be impossible.
So if that's the case, let's go back to the first paragraph of 125.12. Following standards are applicable to all major, minor, and re-subdivisions, regardless of total number of lots involved, except applications under section 125, whatever the number is, conservation subdivision. And then we can address in conservation subdivision standards for the non-conserved lots and conserved lots within that section. So we're gonna add the words except applications.
Or we could say not including. Or with the exception of.
Yeah.
Conservation subdivision 125. 125.
Made under the standards. Of 125-23 conservation. Okay, C. I was trying to read through. It seems a little heavy-handed, but I understand the intent of it. But I think the literal reading of it is heavy-handed, but I don't have a solution of how to clean it up. Well, actually, to start with, planning board can't prohibit uses. Only the town board can by legislation. So. Planning board can impose conditions on a use, but they can't prohibit a use. So. we
Yeah,
can't-
that's the wrong language. I think.
Yeah. You want me to, and I apologize, Mary Lou apologized. She's dealing with a family health situation and was unable to be there tonight. She did say she could, she said she could zoom in at our meeting next week if we wanted to. I could ask her to look at that and see if she can come up with some different language.
I feel like we have like language that talks about what planning board can do, like they can require changes.
Yeah, I think we already do.
Well, also, I feel like this isn't, I feel like this isn't proper to have in general subdivision.
No, I think we should just take it out. Yeah, I think we
Doesn't
should-
like have anything to do with.
yeah, because other places in subdivision, they can impose conditions on any application that are reasonable and necessary, so,
Right, and this isn't,
yeah.
they're not thinking about a site plan or anything like
And
that. It's
and I'm
just-
kind of shame on me, that I didn't read this more carefully. They, in no way can the planning board prohibit use. It's not allowed. We can't give them the ability to even if we wanted to. So we should just remove that whole section. Getting down to that matchbook that Brian Draft can always talk about. I like D
Yeah.
about the underground because I think we want to try to move more to underground utilities and most newer subdivisions are doing it. So I don't have a problem with D. Does anybody else have a problem with D?
No, do we think 4 or more is the number, or do we wanna encourage more than underground to 3 or more?
Well, the 4 or more is kind of the dividing line between major and minor subdivisions, so
Okay,
it stays
okay.
consistent with that.
Should we say, well, okay, so this is talking about dwelling units, but should we be talking about lots?
Wait, okay, to furnish permanent
Hmm.
to one or more. Oh, this is one or more multiple occupancy buildings, including 4 or more dwelling units. So this is saying 4 or more dwelling units within one building. Is what this is saying. So this is talking multifamily housing.
I think it should be required for all.
Well, single family and 2 family, maybe not, but why don't we just say all multifamily housing, which is 3 or more?
I mean, I think by default, people are gonna put it underground anyway, but I think it's reasonable to require them, if you're doing new subdivision, put your utilities underground. You're gonna be doing excavation. anyway.
How about we say that it should be underground unless they request a waiver from the planning board with reasoning, and then the planning board can determine if they're that specific use, then they don't have to go to the ZBA to get a waiver for that.
Yeah, that could be, I mean, if you have high foot traffic or something.
So are we gonna require it though on all single family houses too?
I mean, I think that. We should be pushing forward and moving
Okay.
forward. So,
What would be the
one
difference
full
between a-
start.
Well,
Single family and
it
multifamily.
says, so
Size of the service, basically,
It brings-
for electrical.
there's the whole multifamily housing, and then it says, in which it is planned to build 5 or more new residential buildings shall be, wait, I feel like maybe we need to clean up this.
Well, I'm gonna remove the whole thing and rewrite it. So I'm gonna remove the whole thing. So if we say what we wanted to say instead of trying to tweak this sentence. What I'm, and I'll figure out the language with Mary Lou, if you'd like, we're just gonna require that it be underground, or they can ask for a waiver from the planning board.
Yeah.
But I don't know what this Title 16 of, I'll try to find that out. Aaron, Michael, I know Charlotte and Adam both said okay, so. what do you-
Oh, I'm just like trying to understand what it means
I-
originally as written, which I think it's saying both. It's setting a standard for multi.
Yeah, I don't know, I'm gonna,
And multi.
Is what, yeah, I think it, the language got it.
but I think we're taking it further, Aaron, we're saying every building lot should be underground. So I think we've gone past trying to worry about what they were intending.
Okay.
I mean, I could go look up what that Title 16 is.
I guess I'm okay with putting that in to get comment on it.
So require on all subdivisions. with a waiver possibility by planning board.
So what that title 16 talks about is the utility may require a non-residing applicant before construction and commencement a deposit required for the estimated cost of construction. Something about a escrow for underground utilities.
We can already do an escrow though, so it's redundant. It's already in the code.
And like, I don't think we're gonna have to if we change B to all electric and wiring should be underground. E is waivers from all of these standards may be requested, so I don't think we're gonna. mention
Oh.
Place there.
There you go. Good
There's
call.
always a waiver.
Okay. So I'll tweak that with those changes. Feeling up to moving on to conservation subdivision?
I think I wanna review what you sent us over.
Okay.
Before diving into that, so I might get a better.
Can we
understanding of my
sort of
brain.
talk through it a little bit though?
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
it'll
we
help
can
you
take a look at
understand
it,
it.
but I
Yeah.
think before we go to
Yep,
tweak stuff, I'd
yep,
rather see.
yep.
that review.
So- And Charlotte, I don't know if you were here when we talked about this, so the current issue is, and we really beat it around. We figured out that the current issue resides with one, and what was that, 125, what, 23? Yeah, so where the issue really lies with is F2. It says a mix of lot sizes will be encouraged with up to 20% may consist of. So the problem with conservation subdivisions right now is A, we've only had 3 applications ever. One started and pulled out. One got their approval, but it was a very unique situation. And it didn't really, they were doing it because they needed to secure mortgages and they had one lot with 5 homes on it and they had to cut it up. And the only way they could do it effectively was with conservation subdivision. So it wasn't, and then they never filed their map, so they never got it anyway. And then they came back for conventional subdivision. So it's not a good test. So the current one that is in front of it, what they're doing is they're cutting off pieces of lots that are marginal land. And they're saying, we're conserving that area, but they're pieces of individual lots. So the conservation area is a little bit of this lot, a little bit of that lot, a little bit of that lot, a little bit of that lot. The problem with that is how you, in future, make sure it stays maintained. So a homeowners association, we do it as if it's gonna be a homeowners association in our code. The homeowners association can own a piece of a land that somebody else already owns. Now they can hold an easement over it, but it's not usual. So this training that we went to, the guy said the best way to do it is through a land trust. Absolutely the best way to do it. Now, it can be done through a municipality. He also said that's a really bad idea because municipal boards constantly change. Enforcement becomes tough. The only time it should ever be municipal is if it's going to be turned into public parkland. Say there's an area that they're going to conserve and you're going to deed it to the town. The town's going to take over ownership of that section. And it's going to be perpetually put into parkland or recreation land or something like that. But in that case, it's a clearly defined parcel. It's not a little bit of this piece, a little bit of that piece. So he did say, land trusts are not likely to take on if it's a little bit of 4 or 5 parcels or, just a little bit of a number of parcels, because they're now having to deal with 5 or 6 different owners. They're probably not going to take that on. he did say that it can be done by deed restriction, but again, that's not really good because deed restriction is only essentially enforceable by the courts with a civil complaint. So doing it where there's a little bit of this piece and a little bit of that piece, and a little bit of that piece, that would be done by deed restriction, but again, it's not really enforceable. So he does say, though, that if you do it by an HOA, is the stewardship of the land needs to be included in that, in the HOA's bylaws or the HOA's creation, so that they will have to continue doing that. He did say, municipal parkland is if it's becoming parkland or recreational land, that's not bad, but he did, and he also said it should be trying to read my own handwriting here. It should be identified specifically on the plot. So on the map, it should be clearly identified. There should be map notes to go along with it to explain exactly what you're seeing. And it should be a recorded deed restriction or an easement that is filed with the subdivision map. So our code talks about an HOA or the municipality or a land trust taking it over, but we don't specify that it needs to be its own individual parcel. And what we're getting with this application that's currently before the planning board is they're trying to cut off all those a little chunk of this one, a little chunk of that one, a little chunk of that one. And the problem is, really all they're doing is they're just taking marginal land that they couldn't have built on anyway. And they're kind of using that to their advantage to get smaller lot sizes on places. And it's not really conserving any land. So
It doesn't need to be configured as fine,
it doesn't, but
but should it?
But should it, yeah, should it be
well,
right
so it could be several parcels. It doesn't have to be one parcel. So it could be parcel here, parcel here, parcel here, but it should be in common use. Or able to be in common use. Now, that doesn't mean it has to be opened up to the public. It can be just held in common use for the people who live in that subdivision. It could be recreational trails. It could be a trail along a stream or something, or a nature area or something like that. It could be a bike trail. It could be a lot of things, but it's got to be restricted from any future development. But you do have to set it up so there's some teeth that it can't then be sold off down the road. And that's why my own feeling is by allowing it pieces of multiple lots, it doesn't really solve it. So,
Well, I'm saying you might want to make it configured.
Yeah, we should
yeah,
maybe put in a clause.
but I think they wouldn't necessarily have to be, if say you had 20 acres over here and 20 acres over here. I mean, it's an extreme example, I know, or even 5 acres here, 5 acres there. That's okay.
Well, then we should have
Connect
maybe
it
a
together.
minimum, if it's not contiguous, that it has to be a minimum of 10 acres per lot.
Fair enough. Yeah,
Or
I don't
X amount
know.
of acres
Yeah.
if we deem necessary.
I don't know if you want to go that quite that.
Well, yeah, whatever number we want to do, but that way it's not only like a 2 or 3 acre bubble across the whole larger lot.
We do say in the current code, conservation subdivision shall ordinarily include at least 5 lots and 10 acres of contiguous land. So, but that's for the subdivision itself. So,
Shall ordinarily, that's a little.
well, the planning board shall have the authority to require the submission. So the shall ordinarily include at least 5 lots. So if somebody wanted to come in with a conservation subdivision with smaller lots, the planning board could consider it. So we're not setting a minimum standard, but we're saying this is the normal minimum standard.
That's not really a shall.
Yeah. Agreed. So they start with a sketch plan. And then, so the planning board can modify development standards and grant a density bonus of 25% where 50% or more of the tract is preserved as open space. So if you have that 10-acre lot and you're gonna keep 5 acres of it in conservation subdivision, the other 5 acres, just say, for example, you get a density bonus of 25%. So if you were in a minimum 2-acre lot, you could then get a 25% bonus, so you could get what, 1.5, they could be 1.5 acres instead of 2 acres. So. But well, the key we have to decide, sorry, if we want it to be, I don't know where my voice just went. If we want it to be one lot, or if we are okay with it being partial lots, so.
I think we implicitly that it was partial lot, there's an acreage requirement for it, so it's
Thank
not.
you, Kate. I don't, yeah, I'm not crazy about it being partial lots.
And then I'm not agreeing with that either, I'm saying if we're gonna allow, we should do a restriction on it, that it's a minimum of acreage, so I'm fine with. Yeah, I think it should all be contiguous.
Okay. But it wouldn't have to be the same lot.
No.
So if you wanted to do 2 or 3 lots contiguous, you could split it up into 2 or 3 lots that you were conserving. I mean, if you're conserving it, there's really no reason it couldn't be just one lot.
Or you could also just have separate lots, you could connect them by some kind of other
True.
Yeah.
trail in between.
I mean, there are some reasons for if you're doing a subdivision, I don't know, but it's fine. People have reasons for doing things.
So the question is though, about the HOA. So I'm looking at Patrick Williams' comments and,
Which can you submit it to?
yeah, it's the one that's the single page. So the land trust is always the preferable way, but there's not always you still have to find a land trust that's willing to take it on. And not every land trust will take on a property just because you want them. They have a board of directors to answer to, and they have to decide. But bear in mind, land trusts do what they do very well because their whole mission is to preserve land. So they know the process of how to do it and hold it. We have an awful lot of land in town, in the region already under with the run of the Socus Land Conservancy and others.
Yeah, I don't think we'll change that already here to this.
Yeah. But see, the HOA can't hold an easement. I don't think the HOA can hold an easement title over if it's pieces of land that are owned by somebody else. I think if it's an entire parcel, the HOA just, it's an entity that is formed through the basis of the subdivision. And this particular lot here, instead of being sold, is going to be owned in common by everybody who lives in that subdivision.
But we're not allowing pieces, we're making it contiguous.
Well, if we do that, so what we have to be clear in the conservation subdivision section of the code is area to be conserved must be its own independent lot. Because right now, we don't say that. And that's the problem that we're going through right now is they're not proposing that, so. It's complicated. It's very complicated.
That what he's suggesting is that we,
Yeah, if you look at the other email from Patrick,
Yeah.
which is where he emailed the attorney. So if you go to the second page where the attorney replies back,
I guess that's what I was getting at, is I think that's what he's suggesting.
because that
we
first
do
email came a
options.
couple, like a month ago, and this one came this week after that discussion.
That
So according to the environmental conservation law, conservation easement shall be held only by a public body or not-profit conservation organization. And then they define it. But the question is, can an HOA also be a not-for-profit conservation organization? I don't know that answer. Oh, he says it in the last paragraph. While most HOAs are not-for-profit organizations, I would not say that they meet the ECO definition of a non-for-profit conservation organization, as they are typically not organized for the purpose of conservation, preservation of real property. So a conservation easement just protects the land, but then whoever owns the land underneath administers it. And that's, so the conservation easement is the one that what's used when there's multiple properties and a little bit of this, there's a imaginary line drawn and this area is under easement for conservation. Then the landowner still owns that land. And they still own the easement as well. But it's only enforceable through a deed restriction at that point. Because it's likely a land trust is not going to take over pieces of land that somebody else owns. They might take over the entire property.
Right, they typically don't hold titles.
Right.
So I think what the suggestion is that there be two different options. One, that you could, the area would be held in title by the homeowners association. So you wouldn't have to worry about dealing with the land trust.
Right.
And then the second would be an easement, which anyone could hold the title, like to the conservation area, but it would be protected in perpetuity through the conservation easement.
I'm just
Would
not.
limit development.
I'm just not a big fan of the cutting up little pieces of a whole property and saying that satisfies conservation subdivision.
I mean, isn't that not allowed according to how C is written? It says conservation subdivision shall ordinarily include at least 5 lots of 10 acres of containing. I can't say it, I've said it too many times tonight, Lan. But the planning board may require conservation subdivision design practices. to protect
So
culturally valuable
that's the total lot. That's not the area just being conserved. So the total lot can have at least 5 lots and 10 acres of contiguous land. So the amount that you have to conserve is set up.
Isn't it also that people want to make these lots and then they carve out parts of those buildable lots and say that the conservation area includes
Right.
everybody's backyards?
That's exactly what's happening right
So
now.
that's what
That's what we're trying to
that's the part
stop
that
from happening.
is like, oh, it's Mike's backyard and Michael's backyard and Charlotte's backyard, and they're contiguous, but they're your backyards. So I think it's just the difference between an area held in common for that purpose.
But the
versus
whole-
people owning. Like,
The whole area being subdivided is the conservation subdivision. The area being conserved is not, C doesn't address that.
and the best, like, quote unquote, most like healthiest way to do the conservation subdivision is a true cluster. So there's this way of getting the houses to be really far apart from each other and still calling it a conservation subdivision.
And then we also say 40%
Does that make sense?
has to be open space.
So it's like, there's an idea of contiguous, which is just like the area itself, and then there's the idea of a parcel to parcel. So you can have a contiguous area that spans many parcels that might or might not have a homeowner on them.
But this is saying a conservation subdivision. I'm sorry?
You're saying, so if people, if they leave it as the backyard, it's like lot.
I
and
think
it's
that's a
everyone's
part of the
backyard,
problem that,
Is that
So-
considered common space then?
Well, that's what they're trying to do. So the contiguous, the item C is just saying that you have to have an area that, if you were starting with conventional subdivision, so let's say if you're in a 2-acre zoning area, you have to be able to make 5 lots in that 5 2-acre lots. And you have to have a minimum of 10 acres of contiguous land. What that means is you couldn't own a parcel here and a parcel here and saying, I want to merge those two and make a conservation subdivision, but somebody else owns in between. So that's what that's saying. You can't, you know, your land has to be contiguous, but that's your starting point. So you have to be able to create at least 5 lots. So we're not going to let you create a conservation subdivision that's only going to create 2 lots. You know, this isn't going to be the McMansion where the guy, okay, I'm going to put my house here and that 100 acres back there, that's going to be my conservation subdivision. You know, we're saying the goal of this is to cluster a number of houses close together and then preserve all the surrounding area. But what's happening with this particular application is they're drawing all the lots and then they're drawing another imaginary line around the areas that they can't really build houses on. And they're saying, that's our conservation subdivision, which is a little bit of this lot, a little bit of that lot, a little bit of that lot, a little bit of that lot.
Can you just stipulate that the houses need to be within X percentage of the overall area of the lot, or?
I don't think so. I don't think that's going to solve it.
I don't know, if you say all of the houses, to get that whatever bonuses you're providing, need to be not to exceed 20% of the total area. Or they need to be within 20%.
See, Yeah, I think the only way to really solve it is to say that the conserved area must be its own parcel or parcels.
I was gonna say, can we put that the non-residential portion of the subdivision has to be contiguous? If it doesn't have a residence on it, then that would eliminate them. from
No,
doing
that's
so.
not solving anything. It's still not solving the ownership issue and the ongoing teeth to protect it.
Well, it seems like the ownership issue is because different little bubbles of land, if there was one large.
Well,
Land that would
yeah,
solve it.
Well, I think you're misunderstanding. So the little bubbles of land are contiguous, but the problem is, I could draw it.
it's
for you.
over 6 parcels.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not one, the area that's being conserved is not, they're not drawing a circle around it and saying this is one.
So
one property.
contiguous would be, for example, you can have a lake that's on 4 different parcels, but the lake is contiguous, you know, that's kind of, it's not a lake, it's a conservation area, and the, so the land itself is not broken up by homes or anything like that, but it is broken up by,
who owns it. So each, like the individual people who buy the houses are the ones, they all own like 1/6 of the area, but it's like not the same as like,
So this is really simple, but say this was one piece and they wanted to make 6 lots. And this circle in the middle, and this is what they said, this is the area we're conserving. So this house owns that piece, this house owns that piece, this house owns that piece. So what we're saying is, you can do this if you want, but you gotta create 7 lots. Each of these lots, and then this area is now its own lot and owned by
the homeowners.
either the homeowners association
Okay.
or a land trust.
Yeah, what's wrong with that?
No, there's nothing wrong. This is what we want.
But that's not how
We
it's laid out.
don't want this.
Yeah, let's do that.
Well, that's my point. Is we need to change the law to make it that required. Okay. Sometimes a picture says a million words.
That's why I wasn't getting, like, you kept saying separate bubbles, and I'm like, so they're not connected pieces of land, like.
No,
you
they're-
don't understand.
They're separate bubbles because they're,
I see they each have
Yeah.
a small portion of it
Yeah.
divided between the actual residential
Lots-
uses. That's how
Lots
I hear
versus
it.
contiguous.
I get it.
Yeah.
You start every discussion with a picture.
Yes, yeah.
I should have done that sooner. Sorry. But so that's the goal, how we write it. Now, so then the next question is, do we want to allow it to be owned? If it's going to be an individual lot, then it can be a homeowners association or it can be a land trust. Because the homeowners association could still own it and the land trust could manage it.
Could be anything, right?
Yeah.
You
If,
set up an LLC if you want to.
well, so the.
I don't think
homeowners-
so.
Okay, so there's 2 things on the table. One is, if you put an easement on something, it kind of doesn't matter who the ownership entity is, if it's its own lot. But if there isn't an easement and if you're just deeding the conservation, then it does matter who. the
Well, if it's its own lot, you don't need to do it. If it's its own lot, you label that lot as a conservation lot that can never be built on. And then you only need an easement if you're doing pieces of individual lots, I believe. You don't need a conservation, because an easement is to allow an overlay over what's underneath it. You know, like if you have an easement for a driveway over somebody's property, you have the rights to go over their property to get to yours. That's an easement over their property, but they still own the underlying property. You don't, all you have is a right to drive over it and get to your property. So you don't need an easement with this because now it's its own parcel and it just gets
Well, what's
dedicated as never being built on.
I guess my only concern, I know how easements work, but my concern with it, without an easement, what is the authority of a deed restriction? Like, how easy is it to break that? Because an easement is more permanent.
Right, so we say it must be in common ownership. And then it's not an easement. If one person owns it, then it would be an easement. But if it has to be put in either a land trust or municipal or the HOA, now it is common ownership by everybody who's a member of that HOA.
Yeah, I guess I would want maybe legal advice on
Oh,
how
absolutely.
easy,
We'll talk to Mary Lou on how to write
like,
that.
because what we don't want is for then the HOA to decide that they can just develop the land.
No, they can't, because it has a permanent deed restriction in the deed. But the HOA, it's binding on them.
Well, why don't we put it to Mary Lou? We only have a little bit left of Michael conversation here, because he has to go to, maybe we move on to zoning
Yeah.
code and
Well, the zoning code, all we're gonna talk about is when are we gonna do it. So I'd actually like to talk with Michael before he leaves, so. So let's table this for now then.
yeah. that's
Talk
what
to
I got.
Mary
Motion
Lou.
to table.
We don't have to do a motion.
Okay.
But you're understanding the concept. So what I'm getting at this is we're gonna go to wanting it to be single or it's discrete parcel or parcels. It could be more than one, but it has to be parcels. So, okay, zoning code now. We talked about a Saturday. 8th is obviously the Saturday before Easter. We don't want to meet then. I'm not available on the 1st or the 22nd.
The 22nd, isn't their birthday here anyway, right?
Yeah, but
They don't do it.
it's outside.
Okay.
So we can make it work. The 15th or the 29th. Now, where I think we stand, I'll be honest, we're not gonna be there. It's just not gonna happen. We're gonna have to rewrite, extend the moratorium, or not extend, do a new moratorium. I only want to do 3 more months, so I want us to really push hard to get that. And if we get the subdivision done before June, then we can remove subdivision. But there's no way we're gonna get the zoning code and the map and the schedule of use done by, and get it referred to the county planning board by June 4th. This is not gonna happen. But, so we could, what do your Saturdays in April look like, or Saturdays in May?
What time of day are we talking?
Whatever you guys wanna do.
I'm available during the day on Fridays. Until, well, I guess.
I'm not really thinking night, I'm thinking daytime, but I'm
Yeah.
thinking we come in and we do like, I mean, we'll bring in some food and we'll push through like a 6-hour session or something.
Start in the morning.
Yeah, like 10 o'clock in the morning or something, go to like 3 in the afternoon or something.
I was gonna say 6 hours, I'd be starting at 8.
Yeah.
Want to start earlier? 9, 8? 12, what? 6 hours? We got it, well, we gotta move and get it done. And our workshop meetings keep getting caught up with other stuff. We just need to just do a meeting where we're just dedicated to it. And we got some of the comments that came back, like on the signs, the county recommended that we look at the city of Kingston. So they're not just easy change a couple things here or there.
I'm not available the 1st or the 22nd.
I'm not either of those days, so. And the 8th is the Saturday before Easter, so.
The
I mean,
15th
not
I
bad.
could do if we did it earlier, because I'm throwing a birthday party.
Oh, for me?
Oh,
But I can
When are you
do that.
back?
I'm back the 7th.
Okay.
I could probably do the 15th, I think. Feel like those other weekends.
We want to do the 15th and go and just start with a 6 a.m. Start with a 9 to 1 and see where we get, and then decide where, we can always go longer, or we can do another. We're not gonna get it done in one day. I'm not kidding myself that we're gonna get it done. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the current code as it stands, as we referred it, public hearings. And you guys were here when you got that last spreadsheet, right? That had a list, the secondary list of all where we got comments. Did you guys get it?
Is that the one I have in my back?
Yes.
Yeah.
So what that is, Michael, it's chapter by chapter, and then the comment section is, if it's green, smooth sailing, no comments. If it was yellow, it was advisory comments. If it was red, it was required modification or something strong. And what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna put all the comments together in chronological order of the code, and we'll just start with page 1, chapter 1, 15th at 8:30. You want to set it tonight, or you want to wait until the 4th to finalize that?
No,
No.
it's important to do these things while we feel like.
Yeah, do it now, because I'm
Okay,
gonna move away.
okay. So then,
Other books on there, but
I'm gonna make a motion then that the town board hold a special, hold a workshop meeting Saturday, April 15th, beginning at 8:30 a.m. at the Harold Lipton Community Center, 15 Tobacco Road, Echo, New York, the purpose of working on the zoning code. And I'm gonna say that, so that's all we work on.
And for example.
8:30? And yes, thank you. I'll make the motion. Second?
Oh, I seconded it.
Okay.
Sorry, I thought you made the.
No, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
I'd like to make a motion to.
we have one more.
We have one more
What?
thing.
the pollinator.
Oh, yeah, the pollinator.
So did you print that out, Mike? That one I sent you?
I think I did.
I didn't. So this was just, we don't have to vote on this tonight, but, the ECC would like to become a pollinator pathway chapter. And the pollinator pathway program is a national, not-for-profit, they have 501 status. That basically is made up of grassroots pollinator pathway towns that basically get listed. There's no cost involved with being a pollinator pathway. And the concept behind it is to encourage businesses, municipalities, organizations, and homeowners to plant very pollinator friendly gardens, and that the pollinator pathway chapter would organize, promote, educate, hold events, garden tours, educational events around creating these linked, like a linkage. The idea is that you really try to create a linked pathway for pollinators. So when I asked Mary Lou about what we needed to do on the town level, if they could just do that, she said, no, you should probably adopt a resolution and then assign the duties associated with being a pollinator pathway chapter to the ECC, and then they can just do what they want. So I just basically made up a resolution that was based on a couple of models. There might be some stuff in here that we don't want to put in. We might like it as it is, but the whole idea is that we're committing to creating a good ecosystem for pollinators.
Who is the parent organization that sort of holds this pollinator pathway?
It's Pollinator Pathway.
They're a
Yeah,
not-for-profit.
they're 501c3, and all they do is post to the website with a map. So they have like a map, and you can see anyone that wants like to have like if the town put in the pollinator gardens, we might put the town municipal buildings on the map. It's
The only reason I ask is I'm sure it's gonna be asked, what's the town committee itself, so.
yeah, I can circulate the website to all the board members, but
I just want to be able to answer that question, so.
yeah, I can circulate like a little packet of digital information to the board members. I wouldn't be asking for documents for regular.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to.
I just wanted to.
It's not an urgency.
They've been talking about it a lot. They've been talking to me about it a lot, and it could be a really great anchor project for the ECC to give them a lot of direction and activity and things to do. And so I think it would be really, I'd like to support this
Yeah.
for them.
We'll just check it for any sort of language changes. And
Yeah, and there are many in Ulster County. So
if anybody has any ideas for language change, send it to Aaron between now and April, so we can get it on the agenda for the April meeting. Okay. Who's gonna make the infamous motion?
I'll make the motion. for
I'll
adjournment.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, together.
Oh, sorry.